When you hear the word miracle, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably some big, flashy event, right? A lightning bolt from the heavens, a force from the outside that just completely shatters the laws of nature. But what if we've been looking for it in all the wrong places? What if a miracle isn't some random act of divine intervention that just happens to us? What if it's something that is actually built inside of us? Like less about a lucky break and more about a kind of precise internal spiritual engineering. Now that's a fascinating idea, and it's exactly what we're going to explore. So for this explainer, we're going to give this idea a name, the internal architecture. We're going to treat the miraculous not as some unknowable mystery, but as a structure, a spiritual state that has blueprints we can actually study. It's all about aligning the human vessel with the divine will, to the point where the miraculous becomes possible. So let's get into it. Our journey here starts by flipping the whole idea of a miracle completely inside out. Now, to really wrap our heads around this internal structure, we have to go way back to an ancient vision interpreted by the brilliant philosopher Philo of Alexandria. He looked at this vision and saw something incredible, a detailed schematic of the human soul. And here's that vision, Jacob's dream of a ladder to heaven. Now, this isn't just a cool story about a stairway and some angels. It's a powerful metaphor for the constant traffic between our worlds, the earthly, and the divine. But the most radical idea here isn't the angels, it's the ladder itself. And this is Philo's mind-bending interpretation. He argued that the ladder is the soul. It represents our very own inner architecture, the connection point between our physical, day-to-day existence and the highest spiritual realities. It's rooted in our body, but it's always reaching for something more. So this ladder has 4 key parts, which Philo saw as the components of our soul. First, you've got the body, our earthly vessel. Then the external senses, which act like messengers and bodyguards. Then there's speech, the interpreter of our mind. But that 4th one, the mind, he described it as a holy fragment of the deity itself. It's the very top of the ladder, the part that touches heaven. It's our direct, built-in link to the divine. Okay, so if the soul is the ladder, what are the rungs? How do we actually climb it? For that, we can turn to the gospel accounts, which lay out 5 specific prerequisites, 5 practical things needed to climb this ladder and activate the miraculous. That's right, 5. 5 absolutely essential pillars that have to be in place within this internal architecture. And here they are: unwavering faith, ascetic discipline, divine authority, profound compassion, and doing it all for the glory of God. Think of these as the functional components of a miraculous engine. Let's take a quick look at each one. First up, unwavering faith. This is the absolute, non-negotiable foundation. The sources are crystal clear on this. Possibility is directly, one-to-one, tied to belief. The second you have a moment of doubt, think of Peter trying to walk on the water. The entire structure just falters. Second, rigorous discipline. For the most deeply rooted obstacles, belief by itself just isn't enough. It requires serious spiritual training. We're talking prayer and fasting to purify the vessel and prepare it for a greater flow of that divine energy. Third, divine authority. And this is so crucial. The miracle worker isn't acting on their own power. Not at all. They're operating under a delegated authority, using a name that gives them power over forces they can never command on their own. It's all about being a conduit, not the source. Number 4 is profound compassion. The texts show again and again that the trigger for a miracle isn't a desire for spectacle or showing off. It's an overwhelming gut-level empathy for suffering. Compassion is the spark that ignites the entire process. And finally, divine purpose. The goal can't be personal gain or glory. It just can't. The entire act has to be in service to a higher will to make the works of God manifest. And that requires a complete and total submission of the ego. So building this internal architecture with these 5 components requires more than just action. It demands a fundamental shift in perception, a total re-education of the mind. The Gospels describe this as the state of your inner eye. If your eye is single, meaning it's totally focused on divine understanding and wisdom, your whole being is filled with light. But if it's evil, distracted by base passions and willful ignorance, well then your inner light becomes darkness itself. This re-education is called repentance. But that word doesn't just mean feeling sorry for something. In its original sense, it means a complete change of mind. It's that huge cognitive shift from searching for God somewhere out there to realizing that the kingdom, the divine dwelling, is already within you. Your own soul is the temple. And that brings us to our final and maybe the most paradigm-shattering piece of this whole architecture, and it comes from the mystical texts of the Zohar. Just take a second with that one. This idea completely flips the script. It suggests that the responsibility and the power for the miraculous has been placed squarely, firmly in our hands. But how? How could that be? Well, the mechanism is called the arousal from below. The Zohar teaches that the divine light of the upper world is just waiting, but it needs a catalyst. It needs us, our actions, our spiritual initiative, to awaken it and create a vessel for it to flow into. And this is where it all comes together. A miracle in the external world is a direct mirror of our internal spiritual work. When we achieve that dramatic change inside, when we construct our internal architecture with faith, discipline, and compassion, the universe has no choice but to respond in kind. Our inner work literally pulls the miraculous into reality.
So in the end, the blueprint for a miracle is really the blueprint for a transformed human being. It's an inside job, from foundation all the way to the finish, which leaves us all with just one question, doesn't it? What are you building?